Tonight, new tariff threats send the stock market into a tailspin.
So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
President Trump escalates his trade war with America's allies, threatening 200% tariffs on European wine and champagne after the EU proposed a tariff on American whiskey. Plus, what a diving down means for millions of 401ks. It's a case being called something out of a horror movie. A woman accused of holding her stepson captive for more than 20 years. The risk he took that led to his rescue, and what he told the first responders who found him. New video shows the panicked final moments of the Delphi girls, where this clearer, longer video came from. Changing hands of a fashion dynasty. After nearly 30 years, Donatella Versace is stepping down as creative director. Tonight, a look back at how she transformed the industry and cemented her legacy.
She forms an intersectional, interracial group. Like, it's unheard of for a black woman to be on trumpet and a funk band and the white guy's your drummer. He better be good. You know what I mean?
They are one of music's greatest mysteries. Our conversation with Questlove about his new documentary that examines the rise and fall of Sly and the Family Stone.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos in for Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Tonight, we begin with U.S. stocks tumbling yet again amid the intensifying trade war between the U.S. and our allies. President Trump doubled down on tariffs today, saying he is not going to bend at all. Those words as he threatened to escalate the global trade war with a 200% tariff on all wine and champagne coming from France and other European countries. In response to the European Union announcing plans to slap tariffs on billions in U.S. goods, which included whiskey. But tonight, economists warn that American businesses and consumers will ultimately pay the price. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce leads us off tonight.
Tonight, an ominous new sign the president's escalating trade war is taking a real toll on the American economy. The Dow plunging more than 500 points. And for the first time in 2 years, the S&P 500 closing down 10% from its recent peak, going into what's known as correction territory, an alarm bell for investors that the current roller coaster ride is far from over. Still, President Trump insisting he's not backing down from his sweeping tariffs.
You are not going to change your mind.
No, look, we've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all.
In fact, today, Trump vowing to go even further, threatening a 200% tariff on all wine, champagne, and alcohol coming out of France and the European Union, saying it's in response to the, quote, nasty 50% tariff on U.S. whiskey that the EU announced in retaliation to Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. Economists warn American businesses will foot the bill for Trump's tariffs and pass the costs along to consumers by raising prices. And Tyler Armstrong, who owns a wine shop in Greenport, New York, worries that's exactly what he'll have to do. 70% of the wine he sells comes from Europe.
I would hope that I wouldn't be paying $60 a bottle for a wine that I pay $20 a bottle for now, because then a $30 bottle of wine could cost $90 for the consumer.
Trump acknowledges Americans may take a hit, but argues it's worth it, that our trading partners like Europe, Mexico, and Canada need us more than we need them.
Now, there'll be a little disruption, but it won't be very long. But they need us. We really don't need them.
Canadian leaders say that's not true.
We're your largest customer. There's no one that buys more products off the United States than we do. You're going to be paying a lot more for everything right across the board because you can't get aluminum anywhere else. You only produce 16% of your aluminum. We ship in over 60%. So anything that has aluminum, you're going to pay more.
A new Quinnipiac poll shows most Americans are unhappy with Trump's trade war with America's neighbors. 58% disapprove of how he's handling trade with Canada, while only 36% approve. And 56% disapprove of how he's handling trade with Mexico, with 37% approving. Overall, 54% of Americans disapprove of how Trump is handling the economy. 41% approve. Today, I pressed the president.
Many American small business owners say they are concerned that these tariffs are going to hurt them. What's your message to them?
They're going to be so much richer than they are right now. And we have many. Yesterday, General Motors was in. They want to invest $60 billion. The people from Facebook were in yesterday. They're going to invest $60 billion by the end of the year.
But those are huge companies. Small business owners like Jeremy Peterson, who runs a pet food company in Windsor, Colorado, doesn't have the time or the money to wait out a trade war.
So we need to take these tariffs off the table so that we can get certainty and move forward, just trying to create a living for us and our family and everyone involved with our business.
Let's bring in ABC's Jacqueline Lee. Jacqueline, we're headed into the weekend where many Americans like to indulge in a cocktail or a glass of wine. So break down this potential new alcohol tariff.
Stephanie, this has the power to completely upend affordability when it comes to wine from the European Union. But that only happens if the tariff goes into effect. Trump first put tariffs on the EU expected April 1st. The EU responded by putting planned tariffs on American whiskey. Now, Trump is now responding by threatening European wine and alcohol. So basically, think of this as a huge fight over tariffs and who will blink first, the U.S. or the EU. Stephanie.
Okay, so we have a few weeks for them to figure it out. So bottom line, what's the potential impact on U.S. winemakers, not to mention consumers?
So the bottom line is this really only hurts the American consumer who wants to drink that alcohol. American businesses can only absorb so much of the added cost until it gets passed down to you and me. And given the potential affordability issue, it will push consumers to buy from local vineyards, but that will run up demand, and that can have long-term consequences on U.S. winemakers. It takes years to make wine. You have to remember that. It cannot be turned on like the flip of a switch. Stephanie.
All right, we will see how this all plays out. Jacqueline, thank you so much. Joining us now to talk about how these tariffs will impact businesses and you, the consumer, is Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America President and CEO Francis Creighton. Francis, thank you so much for being here. Let's get right to it.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, what do you think about these tariffs? What could they mean for the market overall?
Well, when you think about tariffs of this scale, if they were to be put into place, they can't be absorbed by a wholesaler or by a liquor store or by a retailer. They're not going to have any choice but to pass those tariffs along to the consumer, meaning that people will see the prices go up on the product of their choice. Some consumers aren't just going to switch from one product to another. Other consumers are going to switch, but it's going to have a dramatic impact on the hospitality sector and on the people who work in the hospitality world.
Okay, so consumers will eventually feel this. So you've also said tariffs can also harm the restaurant industry. How so?
Well, restaurants work on a very narrow margin, and they really depend on price stability to know that when they set up their the cost for their margarita, that they know that all the inputs that go into the margarita, whether it's the spirits or the fruit juices, is going to make them a profit on every glass, right? So when the price of the tequila, which can't be replaced with any other kind of spirit, goes up, there's no choice but to raise the price. Now, in this case, we're talking about European tariffs, right? And so that's going to hit things like French wine, whether it's champagne for your celebration or just for drinking on a Tuesday night, or any other spirit that comes from any of the countries. So that's German wine, Italian wine. That's things like Aperol or Campari for your Aperol spritz or something else. It's going to have a vast impact if these tariffs go into effect across the industry.
So do these tariffs help anyone in the industry?
No, they really don't. You know, one of the ideas of tariffs that some people talk about is that tariffs will impact the foreign country, but not Americans. But, you know, this isn't true. We're not a car or other kind of consumer product where the people who make it ship it to the United States, take it off the boat, and then sell it in their own stores. Because of our unique regulatory system around alcohol, right, what that means is that American companies are purchasing the product at their origin. They're shipping it, importing it into the United States, and then they're bringing it to licensed wholesalers who then sell it on to retailers. So no one's going to benefit. Now, what some people say is, oh, well, that's okay. Americans will just shift their consumption from European products into domestically produced products. know, that's not really how it works with alcohol, right? If you are a drinker of French Bordeaux, that's very different from California Cab. I happen to love both products, but they're different. People have their preferences and they feel very strongly about them. But let's note that it's not that the president said that they're going to go into effect. He said if a bunch of things don't happen, they'll go into effect. We're confident that this is a dispute that can be worked out, and we certainly hope it will, because like I said, I think it's going to have some really bad impacts on consumers and businesses who really depend on these products.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully it is worked out. Francis, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us. Francis Creighton, Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America President and CEO. Thanks, Francis.
Happy to be here.
In other news this week, House Republicans passed a government spending bill, and they'll need Democrats in the Senate to make it through. We're getting late word tonight that Democrats may vote to advance the deal despite not wanting it. Let's break it all down now with ABC's Jay O'Brien. Jay, Democrats have been stuck between really a rock and a hard place, a choice between shutting down the government or voting for a continuing resolution that they really don't agree with. So what is the latest you're hearing from Democrats about how they'll vote?
We got a seismic shift in this storyline, Stephanie, just moments ago when Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, went to the Senate floor and announced that he will vote to advance this package. He will give it his vote. Remember, Democrats need 8 Democratic votes to join with Republicans in order to pass this temporary government funding measure, or at least to clear the first procedural hurdle of it. And it's been this open question as to whether or not Democrats would give those votes. They've been under pressure from their constituents to play hardball with Republicans and play hardball with this White House, but also there have been concerns about the effects of a shutdown. And what Schumer said just moments ago is that while this temporary government funding measure that was pushed through the House by Republicans is bad in his view, the consequences of a shutdown, Schumer said, would be much, much worse, because it would give the Trump administration broad discretion of deeming which federal employees were essential and had to show up to work and not get paid, and which were non-essential and told not to show up to work. And this is already an administration with serious designs of overhauling the federal government. So that's why Schumer said that he was going to vote for this package. It came after a chaotic day, including shouting reporters heard during a closed-door meeting of Democrats. But it is a signal, Stephanie, that Democrats likely have those votes together to advance this government funding measure and avert a shutdown. Stephanie.
And Jay, Democrats say this continuing resolution would pave the way for DOJ and the Trump administration to continue defunding critical programs. So what more can you tell us about what's in the resolution?
So this is a resolution that, again, was put together by House Republicans. It has significant cuts, including here in Washington, D.C., to the city government. It raises defense spending as one other thing. And why Democrats made that argument that it would give DOJ essentially the green light is that while it does have some cuts in it, it also just gives the administration a government that continues to run as the administration continues to do its work in overhauling the federal government and those thousands of firings, et cetera, et cetera. So what we heard from some Democrats, particularly the further left you went in the party, is that they wanted to use this idea of a government shutdown, and particularly the votes that Republicans would have needed from Democrats to prevent one, as a cudgel and use it as leverage against this administration to try to get some protections against Musk and DOJ. But Schumer signaling he's going to vote for it without doing that, Stephanie.
And definitely big news tonight. Jay, thank you so much. Jay O'Brien for us. Earlier, we spoke to Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon to see if there was a clear path forward for Democrats. That was before we just learned Minority Leader Chuck Schumer plans to vote in favor of advancing the House GOP funding bill. But we asked Senator Merkley about that heated closed-door meeting. Take a listen.
You know, absolutely passionate feelings about this critical moment. And there are basically two possibilities. One is that the caucus provides votes and supports the Republican plan from the House. And the second is that we insist on a 30-day CR, a vote on it, that if the Republicans don't support it, then they shut down the government, or they come to the table and we work out a bipartisan spending bill that would be much better than what we're facing. This one from the House, I'm a hell no. It is horrific.
And the White House frames this as a win either way. Either Democrats surrender the votes needed to pass the spending bill or get blamed for a government shutdown where thousands of federal workers could get furloughed without pay. So what are your thoughts on that, on that presentation?
You know, it's wrong, because if there is a shutdown, it will be a Republican shutdown. That means they will vote against our 30-day plan to keep the government open. It means they control the House and the Senate, and they control, of course, the White House. So if they say, no, we don't want to keep the government open for 30 days to negotiate over bipartisan bills, then it's a Republican shutdown. And realize the stakes here. You don't stop a bully by handing over your lunch money, and you don't stop a tyrant by handing them power. We know, as we look in history around the world, that an authoritarian individual needs to be fought sooner than later. So it's a big mistake if we come down on the side of providing votes for this Republican plan.
A new Quinnipiac poll released today shows 54% of registered voters do not approve of President Trump's handling of the economy. And with the trade war only escalating, what's your message tonight to the millions of families feeling unsettled by it all?
I am hearing so much at my town halls. I've held 15 of them around Oregon, and they are upset. This is chaos, and it feels like it's touching them in every possible way. They're feeling Trumpflation from rising grocery prices. They're feeling about their businesses uncertain about what they're going to be sell or what retaliatory tariffs there might be. And they are dramatically upset with basically Trump trying to become a king rather than a president. They know that our democracy is at grave risk right now.
Well, hopefully we can reach some sort of resolution here soon. Senator Jeff Merkley, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Stephanie. Thanks.
Vladimir Putin finally responded today to the U.S. backed Ukraine ceasefire proposal. He said he likes the idea in theory, but there are many things that need to be discussed. Meanwhile, the attacks continue in Ukraine. Our chief international correspondent, James Longman, is there.
Tonight, Vladimir Putin, in his first public response to the US-backed 30-day ceasefire plan with Ukraine, says he broadly supports the idea for a temporary ceasefire, but only with conditions, and that is not what the US demanded. Putin starting with a rare thank you to President Trump, but then saying there are issues that we must discuss with our American colleagues, saying he wants to call President Trump. Those issues include taking back territory seized by Ukraine in Russia's Kursk region, and Putin demanding that in any pause, Ukraine not rearm, train or mobilize troops. At the White House today, with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Trump said he'd love to meet or talk with Putin, calling the Russian leader's comments very promising. Trump says he told his special envoy Steve Witkoff to discuss Ukrainian territory during his talks with Putin in Moscow tonight.
We've been discussing with Ukraine land and pieces of land that would be kept and lost and all of the other elements of a final agreement.
Stephanie, both Trump and Putin said today they want to speak to each other about this deal. Vladimir Putin may have done just enough today to keep the White House happy for now, but he has made no firm commitment to stop his invasion. Stephanie?
Our thanks to James Longman. In a blistering decision, a federal judge has ruled against the Trump administration and reinstated thousands of probationary federal workers. The judge said the government used, quote, lies and gimmicks to unlawfully terminate the workers, claiming the mass firings were based on performance when they knew that wasn't true. The judge didn't challenge the president's authority for layoffs, but blasted the way they were carried out. The White House has vowed to appeal. North Carolina Republican Representative Chuck Edwards got more than he bargained for when droves of constituents turned out for his town hall today in Asheville. Voters stood up and screamed at him into the microphone, angry about DOGE, Elon Musk, federal job cuts, tariffs, the downhill slide in U.S.-Ukraine relations, and the president's talk about annexation for Greenland and Canada.
Okay, so I'm trying to get your opinion on this. As a yes or no, do you support Trump on annexing Canada or Greenland? And do you like the way he treats the premier or the president of Canada, calling him governor? Is that the way you do as a diplomat?
At least one man was escorted out by security. Other town halls led by Republicans in recent weeks have played out similarly. Coming up, he might be a pop star and a multi-millionaire, but even Justin Bieber says he struggles to believe in himself. What the father revealed today in a heartfelt social media post. And a man is in recovery tonight after being held captive for more than 20 years. His stepmother has been arrested, and police say they found him emaciated, filthy, and traumatized. How he finally was able to escape, that's coming up.
It's truly a horrifying, and it's beyond comprehension what occurred here.
Now to that horrific case of a Connecticut mother accused of holding her stepson captive for more than 20 years. The stepson, now 32, weighed just 68 pounds. He set fire to his home, hoping to be saved, and he was. When asked if he was hungry, he told police, all day, every day, my entire life. Here's Whit Johnson.
Tonight, the house fire that led to a shocking discovery in Waterbury, Connecticut.
33 years of law enforcement, this is the worst treatment of humanity that I've ever witnessed.
A 32-year-old man who police say had been held captive for more than 20 years. His stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, arrested.
It's truly a horrifying, and it's beyond comprehension what occurred here.
Authorities responding to reports of an active fire at the home last month, saying they observed a man who was extremely emaciated. His hair was matted and unkempt. He was very dirty, and his teeth all appeared to be rotten. 5'9" and only 68 pounds.
It took a lot of convincing amongst ourselves to just really accept what was going on, and it's really hard to talk about still. I mean, it's shuddering to think that someone would treat any person, let alone a family member or someone that was entrusted as a guardian or a parental figure in this way.
According to court documents, he told officers he intentionally started the fire in his room on the second floor using a lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper because he wanted his freedom.
This is the worst treatment of humanity that I've ever witnessed.
Police say when asked if he was hungry, he stated, all day, every day, my entire life. He recalled drinking water from the toilet because he claimed he was only getting about 2 cups of water per day. The man said he'd been pulled out of school at the age of 11 after the Department of Children and Families was called to their home. Court documents stating that he would steal others' food at school.
Officers went to the house. The house was clean. It was lived in. They spoke to the victim at that point in time, and there were no cause for any alarm or any conditions that existed that would have led officers to believe anything other than a normal childhood and a normal family existence was occurring.
Later, spending years, mostly trapped in his room, telling police the door had been secured with several locks, stopping him from getting out.
That room did have exterior locks on it and a number of different styles of exterior locks.
The 56-year-old stepmother appearing in court today, facing multiple charges, including assault, kidnapping, and unlawful restraint. Her attorney saying she denies all allegations, appearing to place some blame on the accuser's biological father, who died last year.
He's the one that dictated how his son would be raised. She's not the villain she's being made out to be.
Authorities say that none of the victim's family members spoke up out of fear of retaliation. The police chief saying they are working to support the 32-year-old as he heals and navigates the future.
Our plan is to continue to support him. He's going to need a lot of support as he travels through this and tries to figure out how to navigate what has occurred and what the future holds for him.
Our thanks to Whit Johnson tonight. Joining us now to discuss this case is the director of the Forensic Science Program at George Mason University and retired FBI agent and profiler, Mary Ellen O'Toole. Mary, in your writings, you discern between cruel behavior and truly sadistic behavior. How would you describe this case?
There certainly appears to be an element of cruelty here, but sadism is something a little different. And when I've seen sadistic behavior in other cases, what that is the individual, we call that person the offender, they take pleasure in the infliction of physical or emotional pain on another human being. And that pleasure can be in the form of just knowing what you're doing and enjoying the power and the control. And in really extreme cases, it's sexual pleasure. So sadism is something, it's a really very unique type of cruelty.
And this is such a horrible case because this young man had been apparently held captive since he was about 11 years old. So how unusual is it for a woman, not a man, to be accused of this crime, of such a crime?
Yes, it's a great question. And in the cases that I handled as an FBI agent and profiler, involved males that would take someone, or they would control someone, or they would keep someone in seclusion for days, weeks, months, or yes, even years. And usually the motivation was sexual in those cases. And I don't recall seeing a case where it was actually a woman. Now, in this case, as in every case, based on the allegations that we're reading about now, it's likely that there were multiple motivations for allegations that are this severe. And those allegations can range all the way from you deserve it, you get in the way, I'm tired of you, all the way up to a sexual motivation. So my sense is, as this case unfolds, more will come out about the motivations for engaging in this type of behavior.
And we understand that this woman's relatives never spoke out. So what could that tell us about her family, that no one said anything?
Certainly, it's important to understand family members that might have been aware of a cruel, very dangerous, possibly even sadistic behavior, and why a family member or a close family friend would not speak out. And again, my experience has been in other cases that they also are very intimidated by the person. They're also very aware that that person has the capability of being very dangerous, if not lethal. And so through intimidation, family members and friends will oftentimes turn a blind eye because they themselves don't want to become a victim.
But how could this person being kept in this home go unnoticed for so many years?
There's going to have to be a lot more that comes out about that, because that is an awfully long time for no one to have information. It is very unusual in my experience where somebody is just basically drops off the face of the earth and there is no follow-up. And part of that could be attributed to somebody's age. When you're young, there could be assumptions that the person moved away with their family members. And again, I think more will come out just on the lifestyle of the alleged subject in this case. Did they not have a active profile in the community? So if they themselves were reclusive, then it makes more sense that people were not aware of what was happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, still so many questions. Thank you so much for your time. Former senior FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole, thank you so much for your insights.
You are so welcome.
Coming up, the basketball analyst who walked away from making $7 million a year for a job that paid him $75,000. Woj tells us why he did it. And 28 years after taking over the luxury brand known around the world, Donatella Versace is hanging up those heels. How she made Versace what it is today. Fashion will never be the same. After nearly 30 years at the helm of Versace, Donatella Versace has officially stepped down as the brand's creative director. So we're marking the end of one of fashion's most defining eras by the numbers. She took over the luxury brand in 1997 after the murder of her brother Gianni. Donatella's tenure saw the company explode in popularity while staying true to its signature bold, glamorous, and sexy style. The brand revolutionized the runway in the 90s, and sales have skyrocketed ever since, peaking in 2023 with more than $1 billion in revenue. From the Oscars to the White House, Versace has long been a fixture on the red carpet. In 2000, she put J.Lo in the instantly iconic plunging jungle print dress. You'll remember that dress. There were so many search queries for the look that Google Images was born as a result. In 2018, the Versace family cemented their fortune selling the company to Michael Kors, now known as Capri, for $2.1 billion. retailers. Donatella is the most followed fashion designer on social media with more than 12 million Instagram followers. In a post today, she paid tribute to her late brother, writing, "I hope I've made you proud so far." Asked in 2013 about her own personal fashion sense, she said, quote, "My style is not that big. I wear heels, tight pants, and I wear diamonds." An absolute icon. Coming up, Sly Lives. Questlove tells us about his new documentary on the rise, fall, and resurrection of legendary musician Sly Stone. What forced him to hide from the public, and what brought him back? But first, an American college student vanishing off a popular spring break beach in the Caribbean, now missing for a week. The search going global, and what authorities say about the man she was with before she disappeared. That's coming up next. Welcome back. There's a global alert tonight in the disappearance of a 20-year-old Pittsburgh college student who vanished on spring break in the Dominican Republic. The international agency Interpol is now teaming up with the FBI and local authorities in the investigation. Here's Ariel Reshef in the Dominican Republic.
Tonight, the global alert. Interpol now involved in the case of missing 20-year-old University of Pittsburgh student Sadiksha Kananki. The global missing person alert, called a yellow notice, was issued at the request of the Loudoun County, Virginia sheriff, where Kananki's family lives. Officials in the Dominican Republic say Kananki was last seen on this surveillance video walking to the beach with 24-year-old Joshua Reeby around 4 a.m. According to authorities, Reeby captured on hotel cameras returning to his room that morning around 9 a.m. alone. Kananki's clothes and shoes found on the beach. Loudoun County authorities calling Reeby a person of interest. But Dominican authorities tell ABC News Reeby is cooperating and is a witness, not a suspect, telling them that the two were hit by a large wave. They also say he gave them 3 different versions of what happened that night because he was too drunk to clearly remember. Laurel Shriver has known Reeby since he was 8 years old.
Josh would never hurt a girl. I don't know what happened, but there's no way he would have intentionally been any part of any scheme to do something to her.
Hopefully she is found safe soon. Our thanks to Ariel for that report. The NBA news he broke at ESPN became known as Woj bombs. Then he decided to shock the world with a major career pivot. Our Eva Pilgrim sat down with this basketball reporting legend and discusses his new beginning.
Adrian Wojnarowski, known to his millions of social media followers as Woj, made a name for himself as ESPN's NBA insider.
There are too many Woj bombs to count.
Breaking stories about basketball's biggest stars.
We bring in the one, the only, Woj.
But he made headlines himself last year when he decided to retire from his high-flying job.
He's the best in the business, make no mistake about it.
He is the best basketball reporter who ever was.
You still had time on your contract at ESPN for a lot of money. Why walk away from that?
I kept asking myself, why would you stay? And the best reason I could come up with was the money, and it wasn't a good enough reason for me.
You were diagnosed with cancer as well.
I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and we got it early, and I was fortunate, and I hopefully will be able, to manage it, but I wanted my family and my wife and I to be able to spend our time in ways that were really meaningful for us. I've enjoyed that challenge.
Woj took a new job, instead returning to his alma mater, St. Bonaventure University, as general manager of their basketball team.
Guys, we got Woj.
For Woj to come back, how big of a deal was that?
It was a mic drop moment. I joked that he was my first hire and I could have walked away and retired and maybe had the most prominent hire in St. Bonaventure athletics history.
The job offered him $75,000 a year, far less than the $7.3 million he was making at ESPN.
You took a 99% pay cut to take this job. And a lot of people just would kind of scratch their heads at that.
He offered me more than actually I thought they'd be able to pay.
You would have done it for less?
I understand it's easy to look at what I gave up. I don't think about what I gave up. I think about what I gained here. So much of what's good that's happened to me in my life comes from my time here. I met my wife, Amy, here. That train moves really fast, and I just sort of pictured myself pulling that lever on the train and saying, this is my stop. And
It makes you emotional. What about this place makes that so emotional?
It's a magical place. It's a magical place, and people care about each other here, and people stay incredibly connected to St. Bonaventure, and I think basketball for our university is a huge part of that.
With just around 2,000 undergraduate students, St. Bonaventure is the smallest school to ever make it to the NCAA Final Four, and basketball is central to its identity.
Everybody who's been around our conference knows you go on the road and Bonnie fans are everywhere. And so I feel a responsibility to try to help get the program through what's a difficult time.
Small schools like St. Bonaventure have been forced to adapt ever since student athletes began to accept payments through name, image, and likeness deals. And soon, universities will be able to pay those athletes directly, spelling the end of amateur sports for many college athletes.
With everything that's been happening with NIL and the way that college sports has transitioned in the last several years, were you worried that this school wouldn't survive that?
I worry every day about it.
Woj's new job is personal. The hours now have a purpose that hold a special meaning to him, keeping his beloved St. Bonaventure competitive, helping to secure the future of the school's athletic programs, selling young athletes on the magic of being a Bonnie, and trying to get their men's basketball program back to the big dance, March Madness.
Listen, I picture our coach and our players cutting down the nets in March like every other school does, and I still think we'll see those days again here.
Everyone loves the Cinderella. It's like one of our favorite parts of March Madness. You worried that's going to go away?
We're not going away at St. Bonaventure. I know there's a lot of like-minded schools, comparable schools to us, who feel the same way, and we can do it. And we've got to really work hard on what the pathway is. We're always fighting a little bit uphill based on our resources, but it doesn't feel like work. At some point, I'm going to go sit in a beach chair on a beach, but we have a lot of work to do here, and I'm having a blast.
We're so excited for him. Our thanks to Eva Pilgrim. The haunting full video in the Delphi murders case is posted online. What it reveals about the victim's last moments. Also, skincare products are recalled due to elevated chemicals associated with cancer. And what caused explosions of green smoke on a college campus. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
A video key to a 2017 double murder case in Delphi, Indiana, has been publicly released. The video of Liberty German and Abby Williams was shown in court during last year's trial of the convicted killer, Richard Allen, and officials had released a photo and audio from it. But the full 43-second video was posted Wednesday on a Justice for Rick Allen website. The cell phone video, taken by German shortly before the murders, shows William walking with a man close behind her and includes a short exchange.
Hi.
The video release comes as attorneys for Allen filed an appeal. Meta says it will start testing a community notes function developed by X for fact-checking on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. It will let users write and rate notes and flag false or misleading content. The company says the notes will be written by volunteer contributors and based on a rating system. Meta ended its third-party fact-checking program in January, saying they had become politically biased. Critics say community notes will actually legitimize disinformation on the platforms. A wild scene at a Texas Tech university. Green flames were seen shooting from multiple manholes on campus after an explosion at a substation caused widespread power outages. Several buildings on campus had to be evacuated, but luckily no injuries were reported. The cause is unclear, but fire crews had been called in for a possible gas leak. The campus was shut down, and students were dismissed early for spring break. Pop star Justin Bieber took to social media to speak candidly about feeling unworthy. The singer writing in the Instagram story that despite people telling him he deserved something, he always felt like a fraud. Even Justin Bieber wrote that he feels unequipped and unqualified most days. The post comes after recent reports speculating on the singer's health and possible recent drug use, with the rep denying the latter to TMZ and saying Bieber is focused on his family and new music. The FDA has announced a recall of certain skincare products contaminated with benzene, a cancer-causing chemical. The
The voluntary recall includes products from La Roche-Posay, Proactive, and Walgreens, among others. The FDA does say that even the daily use of the products over decades, the actual risk of developing cancer from benzene exposure is very low. The Tampa Bay Rays are scrapping plans for a new ballpark in St. Petersburg, Florida. The team was looking to move the new park after finishing their lease at Tropicana Field, but the plans were complicated by financing delays, as well as Hurricane Milton, which heavily damaged Tropicana Field in October, forcing the team to play at a temporary home for the upcoming season. Principal owner Stuart Sternberg said the city was advancing plans to restore Tropicana Field in time for the 2026 season.
You likely know Questlove, aka Amir Thompson, as the drummer for his band The Roots. And as a music producer and historian, he has also earned 6 Grammy Awards. He's an equally accomplished film director too, winning a Best Documentary Oscar in 2022 for Summer of Soul. His latest documentary for Hulu, Sly Lives, aka The Burden of Black Genius, chronicles Sly Stone's incredible rise to fame in the late 60s and equally rapid decline. Our Ike Ajachi sat down with Questlove to talk about this film.
Do you believe in the concept of black genius?
Black genius?
Wow. We're talking about this phenomenal documentary that you helped produce here. Sly Stone, born Sylvester Stewart, the music of Sly and the Family Stone. It's transcended cultures, generations. So why make a movie about him right now?
Sly was one of those figures who was larger than life, like what Michael Jackson was for me. Michael Jackson actually picked up the baton that Sly dropped around 1975. If you remember everything that was Michael Jackson and the way that he just overshadowed everything, that was supposed to be Sly Stone.
If you're Sly Stone, there is no blueprint for what comes next.
Sly Lives, the burden of black genius.
Yes.
So what does that actually mean to you?
There's a thing that happens that I think most people aren't aware of, because everyone wants to be successful, but there's a lot that comes with that, and especially if you're black, it's a kind of get out of jail, get out of strife free card, but it's only for you and you alone. And Sly, unfortunately, to be that creative and that vulnerable also means that the temptations of what happens when one really isn't grounded. I felt it was best to present this story in an empathetic way, because not many people know about Sly's life, and hopefully they'll see themselves in it.
The idea of being the chosen one. Sly was the chosen one very early. As a matter of fact, at 19, he released that hit single, Laugh, Laugh. It reached the top 20. How else was he a prodigy?
The one thing I didn't know about Sly was his life as a radio DJ in the Bay Area. Sly's playing everything. And so he's basically raising that counterculture, hippie kind of atmosphere that San Francisco is known for. So he was a natural born leader. And so in 1967, he pivots to the next step, which was like all the music that he learned as a DJ.
At that time, the mixed group was a new thing. Guys and girls and black and white. So you get all that input. They sounded like nothing else sounds.
He forms an intersectional, interracial group. Like, it's unheard of for a black woman to be on trumpet and a funk band and the white guy's your drummer. He better be good. You know what I mean?
The band itself was an amalgamation of so many different types of people and cultures. Then you got that song, Everyday People. How are those two things linked?
So part of the pressure of when you talk about the burden of black genius is you have mere seconds to figure out a way how to disarm people and let you in. Everyday People is a perfect example of that.
Everybody wanted him
to bring people together. This country was tearing itself apart.
I was scared. At the time, it was almost too much all at once.
This song was basically a 3-minute subliminal plea to say, like, hey, we're all one and the same. Like, we're not who you think we are. And that song was necessary in 1969, but it was also like, it was a risk because it could have also been seen as like, well, why are we begging to be loved by people who kill us every day and routinely abuse us?
A family affair. That's one of the most sampled pieces of music ever. What's the story about how that came about?
Sly does Woodstock, and about maybe 2 months after, he just becomes a household name. He takes Woodstock and really just captures America's heart, and he's now the chosen one. Sly gets this drum machine, which is seen as relatively corny, and he figures out a new way to make it somewhat hip and presents what we now coin as funk music. So Family Affair always stuck with me because literally he says in the last line, like, you can't cry because you'll look broke down, but you're crying anyway because you're all broke down. There's kind of a unspoken depression there, but you're also God to people. So it's like, wait, are famous, successful people allowed to be depressed as well?
Sly, he ushered in the idea of the visual record, especially with his wigs, his costumes. How did that aspect of his personality essentially influence other black musicians?
Sly basically just presented a kind of freedom that we never had before because his success was different than James Brown or Chuck Berry or whoever came before him. They couldn't eat in the same restaurants that they were entertaining in. They couldn't stay in the same hotels in Vegas that they were entertaining in. They had to enter through the back door. So Sly was the first person to get the red carpet rollout treatment as a black person in America that we've been fighting for since slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, civil rights period. Sly is the beginning of that. Too much freedom, isolated freedom, is a hard thing to handle.
The anxiety, the pressure, the drug use. He was an underdog. You are exceptionally gifted. But at the same time, none of that protects you.
So how did that burden of black genius ultimately derail Sly Stone's career?
When you're subconsciously frightened and afraid of whatever comes next and you don't know, like we like safety. We want to know what happens next. Sly doesn't know what's going to happen next. And so as a result, there's this need to self-soothe. The idea of the troubled genius that I wanted to kind of get rid of and see people in a more empathetic light and get them to see that these artists are human beings and we see them as superheroes.
Sly Stone, he's 81 years old. How's he doing today?
He's literally now an everyday person. He's been sober for about 6 years now. He has a beautiful relationship with his children. His grandchildren love him. They just do normal, everyday things. Like he's very active just in his home life, living life and enjoying it. And that's how it should be.
So many Sly Stone classics. Our thanks to Ike Ajachi. Questlove's Sly Lives, a.k.a. The Burden of Black Genius, is streaming right now on Hulu. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.